When I look back on my time as a zombies player, the moments I always remember most fondly are those insane feats. Moments that I still can't believe happened, even after all this time. Like when we completed the final step of the Shadows of Evil Easter egg with only 3 people, which we didn't even know was possible at the time. And then there was the time I finally managed to solo the Mauer der Toten boss fight, which took me nearly a month to pull off. Part of that was because the game was constantly crashing, but improving at that boss fight really helped make me a better zombies player. And of course, I have to mention my social distancing challenge from my previous video. But above all else, the moments that really stand out to me are completing Black Ops 6's Easter eggs during Cowabunga Cranked. Every time I go back and look at these, I remember just how tough and stressful they were. But every time I completed one, I was met with a satisfaction that couldn't be beat. And part of that was knowing that once I finished Citadel, I could finally be done with Cranked. And then, Treyarch brought back Cranked again. After just a month and a half, Treyarch released Team Cranked, which is similar to Cowabunga Cranked, but without all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles branding, and with a focus on teamwork. This time, the timer is shared between all players, and the field upgrade stops everyone's timer for about 10 seconds. For those playing as a team, this is a much appreciated change. But for solo, it is a massive nerf. But it seemed that Treyarch fortunately thought about this by making the rewards this time solely for reaching round 50 on each map. I didn't really have plans for Team Cranked apart from reaching round 50 on each map, but after reading through the comments on the last video, which by the way, thank you for all the support on that video. I honestly didn't expect it to do as good as it did, but I'm really happy you guys enjoyed it. But while reading through the comments on that video, I got a few ideas. One suggestion was to do a Cranked video, but I had already done Shattered Veils round 50 on Cranked before reading it. Another suggestion mentioned the Terminal Dark Ops challenge, but I already completed it months ago, and I wasn't paying another $70 just to unlock it again. But after letting ideas simmer in my head for a while, I came up with the perfect challenge to follow up the last video. I'm no stranger to combining 2 difficult challenges to create one extremely difficult challenge. And while I hope that specific challenge will finally see the light of day at some point soon, I decided to combine these 2 challenges together, with the goal of completing Terminal in Team Cranked. At the time, I had no idea if this was even possible, but the concept just seemed too interesting to not try, so I knew I had to. This is my journey of completing Terminal in the worst way possible. If you enjoy content like this, then I'd recommend you subscribe to be notified about future videos and help me get more disk space, because... Anyways, despite completing the Terminus Easter egg plenty of times, I was pretty rusty when coming back to it. I hadn't played much Terminus at all since beating the Easter egg in Cowabunga Cranked, so I made a fair amount of mistakes. I died in a lot of stupid ways, forgot the order of the islands to charge the multiphasic resonator, and did some things out of order and inefficiently. But I figured this was to be expected, and it's why I spent the early runs using the Kilo to work on the camo grind, and planned to buy my real gun if I made it far enough. But that's when I realized Cranked disables wall buys, which made me feel pretty stupid. But it doesn't really matter what gun you use initially. The first few steps of the Easter egg don't change much with Cranked, and once all the electrical boxes have been hit, the secret workshop opens up, which ultimately gives access to the multiphasic resonator. And it's here where I hit my first major roadblock: math. Okay, not really. These calculations aren't anything difficult, but they can be when you have to solve them and enter them in such a short amount of time. Even with the field upgrade, you don't have a lot of room for error, which is why my first thought was to just pay Peck for the answers instead. But since I had never actually done this before, I didn't really know how it worked. I spent a while trying to give Peck my hard-earned points, only to find out that you have to activate the 3 laptops anyway. And even after I finally put the code in, I almost died in the secret workshop afterwards, and only survived because I popped the mutant injection I got from the box earlier. It didn't take me long to realize that these struggles were stupid, since there is no time limit on solving the equations, just for inputting the answers. And you can even solve the equations before putting the resonator in, since the symbols on the laptops actually correspond to the symbol you would see on the sticky note. This certainly made the step a little easier, but I was immediately met with a far worse roadblock afterwards. After taking the calibrated resonator, you're tasked with visiting 3 islands to charge it. And this isn't really a problem in a standard game outside of maybe being a little boring and out of the way. But in Cranked, it's a totally different story. Since zombies don't spawn in the water, I can't kill anything to reset the timer while I'm in a boat. And when you're doing an Easter egg with a lot of boat travel, that's kind of important. New zombies also don't spawn until your character actually gets on the island, so I can't just kill them as I'm approaching the other island either. This is where I had to get a little creative, and when I found out that the zombies will stay on land while you're in the boat, I came up with a strategy called boat killing. While in the boat, you can stand on it and still use your gun, allowing you to kill zombies before or even during travel in a boat. You can even jump onto land to spawn zombies, and then jump back into the boat to reset the timer before going elsewhere. The other important thing to mention is that parasites are very valuable for boat travel, since they will follow you and spawn around you. This becomes critical as I get to the later steps of the Easter egg, so it's important to mention it now. As I began to understand how the Easter egg worked in Cranked, I was getting the hang of these strategies, and on my 7th attempt, I was able to finally make some decent progress. I started off by activating the amp units and buying my 2 essential perks, Quick Revive and Juggernog. For survivability, these perks are the best in the game, and given how bad my early game would go when I didn't buy them, they were pretty much required. When I typically play Terminus, I go through the sea caves to reach the biolab. But in this challenge, I took the mining tunnels instead to waste less time having to go around a door I should just buy anyways. Once in the biolab, I activated the final amp unit and Pack-a-Punch, and then spent a few rounds farming points. There are a lot of environmental zombie spawns in the biolab, including the cage zombies that are pretty easy targets. And there also happens to be an easy double points power up to hit nearby, which combo well together and give me more than enough points for the time being. One of the first purchases I make with these points is to hit the box, and I managed to pull a legendary Goblin Mark II, which made the early game a lot easier compared to previous attempts. But before leaving the biolab, I visited the mining tunnels to grab PhD Flopper. The sliding is great for getting places quickly, but more importantly, it allows me to use the GS45s. These were the obvious weapon of choice for a challenge like this. Given they're one of the few good weapons at high rounds, they kill things incredibly quickly, and they work well enough for the boss fight. They can be a little inaccurate and don't have much ammo, but that doesn't really matter when you can just blow everything up effortlessly. Once I grabbed PhD, I then opened the door to the sea caves to purchase Speed Cola. Just like my social distancing video, Speed Cola is an essential perk for a challenge like this, given that if I need to reload at a bad time, it can help make the difference between getting the kill or dying before the reload is even finished. But it also helps with charging the field upgrade too, and that will be incredibly useful throughout the run. After getting access to the secret workshop and grabbing the resonator, I activated all 3 laptops, but messed up the resonator code a ton of times. I kept double checking my math to make sure I wasn't messing that up, but it turned out that I was just inputting the wrong numbers after the fact. This resulted in me waiting a little longer than I needed to, but I was at least able to take advantage of another double points in the meantime. Once I finally realized my errors, I took the resonator and headed to Castle Rock Island after a boat kill and a field upgrade. I killed zombies until the resonator was charged and then began to head towards the next island. But as I was passing by the main island, I jumped out of my boat to spawn zombies below the sea tower and killed some so I would have enough time to get to the next island. I slightly messed up here by accidentally destroying my own boat, but I was just able to buy a new one and arrived at Crab Island. This is definitely the worst island of the 3 to charge the resonator, but I was able to get it done and even got some free salvage from a chest while there. Before heading to the 3rd island, I took a detour to the nearby shipwreck. One of the few benefits to Cranked is that you get early access to the Wonder Fizz, allowing me to purchase a few perks I normally wouldn't be able to buy until round 25. In future attempts, I didn't bother buying most of these, given they're not useful until high rounding anyways. But the one exception is Vulture. Parting Gift makes using the Beam Smasher a lot easier thanks to all the ammo drops, and as I mentioned in the last video, Picky Eater is just a great augment that helps save on salvage, and it's useful for the entire challenge. Once I was ready, I swam to my boat and headed straight for Temple Island. Thanks to my field upgrade, I had just enough time to arrive and kill a zombie before the timer ran out. And after charging the resonator one last time, I finally got the amp munition, which is needed to craft the Beam Smasher. I killed zombies until my field upgrade was ready, and then headed all the way back to the main island. Thanks to the parasites from the bug round and my field upgrade, I was able to go straight from Temple Island to the main island with just enough time to kill a zombie. And after saying goodbye to my legendary Goblin Mark II, I finally crafted the Beam Smasher for the first time on round 18. And then I immediately went down. I managed to escape after reviving myself, but I did so a little too well, since there were no zombies around me and the timer ran out. It was a little underwhelming, but I had finally crafted the Beam Smasher, and with everything I had learned, the momentum was building. After crafting the Beam Smasher for the first time, I started improving rapidly. On my very next attempt, I managed to craft it again and used my GS45s to clear the area before taking it this time. With the Beam Smasher, I was able to get the hard drive, input the code, and finally start the Nathan fight. And I even unlocked the Nebula camo on my GS45s. Unfortunately, I didn't get far in the Nathan fight since I ran out of time in an area where zombies don't spawn, but I was making progress. A few attempts later, I completed the resonator code early enough to actually grab it the second it first gets calibrated on round 9, and then crafted the Beam Smasher on round 11 instead of round 18. Making improvements like these is incredibly important in Cranked, since the timer gets shorter every round. So staying on an earlier round means more time to do things in between each kill. I also managed to finally kill Nathan for the first time, which isn't anything too noteworthy, given it's basically just a fight with some zombies and an amalgam, but it was a milestone nonetheless. And immediately after the Nathan fight, I went down, which definitely set me back a bit, but I wasn't done just yet. The next part of the Easter egg involves going to the shipwreck workshop, surviving a lockdown, and using the node connectors to repair 2 of 3 locations. For a standard game, this is mainly just annoying, but for Cranked, it requires a lot of precision and planning. On this run, I was still able to get inside the shipwreck workshop, complete the lockdown, and repair 1 of the 2 nodes, but I got instantly overwhelmed when going back for the second node and died trying to pop my mutant injection, which didn't work, either because the space is too small or because I was carrying the node. But regardless, I had been making solid progress on completing the Easter egg, and on top of actually progressing through the Easter egg, I was starting to optimize my strategy to make my attempts a bit more consistent. I started trying to strategically kill zombies when charging the resonator, since killing less zombies means being on a lower round. I also started to make use of the map's dig spots and chests, both of which can give you some pretty decent rewards. I started optimizing my routes to get multiple things done at once, such as activating the X laptop during my PhD and Speed Cola trip. I even started calculating the resonator code while playing, since I had pretty much memorized the equations by this point. And I also made use of the paused timer after the Nathan fight to pick up the keycard before it started again. I only knew it was a matter of time until I would get my chance to make some progress, and I didn't have to wait very long. My 16th attempt didn't start off great, given I pulled the ASG from the box. You might think I would be happy to see the ASG after the last video, but it really isn't great for this challenge, since I'm not pack-a-punching it, and I'm usually hitting the box for a gun that can get critical kills easily, since those are worth a lot in Cranked. And to add to this, I also messed up the resonator code a few times, putting me a little behind. However, once I arrived at Crab Island, I opened a chest and was greeted with a refined Ethereum crystal, aka Pack-a-Punch Tier 2. This was a pretty big deal, since it just saved me 15,000 points. I actually wanted Pack-a-Punch 2 before leaving 2, but since the platform was in the biolab, I decided to just skip out on it, and that decision really paid off. From there, I was able to craft the Beam Smasher, beat Nathan, finish the lockdown, and started the node step. Unlike the earlier attempt, the node step was a bit easier this time, since I had more time by being on an earlier round, and I happened to get a lucky bug round while on the step, so I didn't even need to use my field upgrade to come and go from the ship. Patient 13 definitely made my life a little more difficult, but I was ultimately able to repair the nodes and start the next step of the Easter egg, the buoy step. This entails hacking 3 buoys around the island to redirect Dr. Modi's submarine to this island. But there's a catch. Once you hack the first one, there's a time limit before you have to restart the step all over again. This isn't a big deal for a standard game, since it really shouldn't take long to do so. But for Cranked, it's a completely different story, since you would have to juggle killing zombies while hacking and going from buoy to buoy. But I did have an idea, and that idea was to wait for a bug round and have a group of parasites follow me around as I did my hacks. So I killed zombies until it was round 23 and headed to the first buoy. I killed a parasite, hacked the buoy, and after the hack, I tried to kill a parasite, only to realize that there are no parasites. After completing the hack, the parasites that spawn around the buoy and any parasites from the round despawn. And it was this moment that I realized this might not be possible. The buoy timer hadn't even started yet, and I was already on the verge of death. They did eventually respawn, but I only had a few seconds to spare before the crank timer would have ran out. I managed to make it to the second buoy and hack it, but since there were no parasites afterwards, I ran out of time. It really sucked that things ended like this, but I had at least made some progress, and I had a lot to think about going forward. The buoy step was the biggest roadblock yet, and I honestly couldn't really think of a way to do it without gobblegums. Having to worry about one timer is already bad enough, But having to manage 2 timers while doing a step with pretty tight timing is even worse. And like the node step, having to use boats to travel is less than ideal in Cranked, even if I could get some parasite spawns. If I was ever going to make it past this step, I was going to need to use everything at my disposal. One of my first ideas was to look for the free full power power-up, and see if maybe I could use a C4 to pop it at an opportune time. Once I found it, the C4 strategy ended up being out of the question, since it's pretty far out of bounds. But it is actually nearby the final buoy, so instead of using a C4, I could just shoot at it. The only problem was that this was very inconsistent, since the GS-45s are pretty inaccurate, and you have to hit just the right spot in order to activate the full power. Throughout my testing, I just could not get it consistently enough to implement it into my strategy, so it was largely just a backup plan. But in its place, I made the decision to finally start using Gobblegums. With how much harder the challenge had become, I knew they were going to be necessary. And realistically, I knew I would probably be using them in the boss fight, so I might as well start using them for the hardest step of the Easter egg too. But for the time being, I tried to use them sparingly, since if I just popped a bunch of timeouts, that would be a pretty lame way to complete the step, and furthermore, I didn't have many to use, so I'd just be out of luck if time ran out. I began to plan for the buoy step, finding times to incorporate Gobblegums and working on my boat driving to save some time while traveling from buoy to buoy. But I also had to consider what I would even do once I successfully hacked them all, since I would need to get back to the main island for the bomb step, which is also timed, but is far more generous. This is when I plan to pull out my secret weapon, Score Streaks. Remember when I nearly died in the secret workshop and popped a mutant injection? Well, one thing that immediately stood out to me was that the crank timer stopped. I knew this would become very useful eventually, and that time was now. If I could stall out the dialogue before the bomb step, I could potentially have enough time to let the zombies spawn on the main island again. But above all else, I knew the most important thing was to just keep optimizing the Easter egg, since if I got to the buoy step on a lower round, then I'd have more time in between each kill. Over the next few attempts, I learned a few new tricks about Terminus. The laptops needed for the resonator code can actually be activated earlier than I expected, since they only require local power. That means the Y and Z laptops can be turned on after the second amp unit, and the X laptop can be activated after the third amp unit. This wasn't a huge deal, but these bits of time save really add up over time. I also learned about a soft lock that is deadly in Cranked and ultimately cost me an attempt. This actually happened to me once in directed mode months ago, and I just had to sit there for 2 minutes until the door finally opened, which isn't possible in Cranked. But by keeping a zombie alive for a bit, it seems to stop the issue. So if you're wondering why I'm holding a zombie during a lockdown, that's why. All of this knowledge would finally come to use on attempt number 25, where the tides finally seemed like they were on my side. I started off with the usual early game, but with keeping my optimized laptop routing. After visiting all 3 islands with a focus on keeping zombies alive to keep the rounds low, I crafted the Beam Smasher on round 11, grabbed the hard drive, and was ready for the Nathan fight. Unlike previous runs, I kept my GS-45s at uncommon rarity rather than rare rarity, which was an effort to save some salvage while not changing the fight much. After grabbing the keycard, I headed to the shipwreck workshop and completed the lockdown while stalling out the zombies to avoid a soft lock. Using the parasites that spawn when first visiting the shipwreck workshop, I was easily able to repair the first node, and then a bug round made the second node even easier. Before heading back to the guard tower, I grabbed some tier 3 armor and then grabbed the hacking device to begin the buoy step on round 15. I popped an arsenal accelerator before the first hack, but because my boat drifted backwards a bit, I was a little short on time after my first hack. I popped my field upgrade and power keg soon after, giving me access to another field upgrade. but I ended up not needing it immediately. Unlike the last time, the parasites actually spawned in pretty quickly, allowing me to reset my timer as I headed toward buoy number 2. I popped my field upgrade before arriving at Temple Island and focused on recharging my field upgrade ASAP. This only took around 20 or so seconds, which meant I had enough time to get to buoy number 2, and after killing a parasite, I completed the hack. I also managed to get a bit of distance from the buoy while hacking, since I ran my boat into it and drifted backwards. And again, the parasites spawned a lot faster than I expected, which allowed me to not even need my field upgrade for that hack. I quickly made my way to the 3rd buoy while occasionally killing the parasites trailing behind me, and as I approached the final buoy, I popped my field upgrade and did the final hack. The parasites respawned yet again, and I managed to kill one just in time before the white flash happened. I quickly headed back to the main island, but was soon met with a pretty unfortunate realization. After that white flash, the zombies don't spawn in, which means I can't reset the timer. I could have popped my Hellstorm, but I didn't really have enough time, and for a light spoiler, that wouldn't have saved me anyways. So to save myself the headache, I popped the timeout. As lame as it was, I did actually make it through the buoy step without it, but I just needed it until I finally found some zombies in the biolab. This is where I finally got to utilize my tactical equipment, smoke grenades. Once the smoke is deployed, you can pretty much defuse without any worry. And with reactive armor, you can just tank through the final defuse to make it through the bomb step. For the first time throughout this entire challenge, I could actually enter the boss fight, but I wasn't ready yet. In order to complete Terminal, you have to complete the Easter egg after round 50, which means I have a lot of high rounding to do. I did have plans to play the Spotlight Hour in Pokemon Go that day, but that was on hold for now, because it was time to kill everything. Fuck you, Amalgam. Yeah, fuck you, Mangler. Event complete, let's go. Pew pew pew. Wait, what? No. 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 As it turns out, the Pokemon Go Spotlight Hour isn't the only thing scheduled for Tuesdays at 6 PM, because that also happens to be when the Black Ops 6 Steam server maintenance happens. And since it's an online game, it's not playable when the servers go offline. But this usually isn't the worst thing in the world, since the game will make a backup save. It even happened to me while trying to complete the Shattered Veil Easter egg, and it did set me back a bit, but I was at least able to continue. But in Cranked, there is no saving, which means my game is just gone. All that time and effort, all those gobblegums, including a timeout, all wasted. But hey, at least I got to play that more lol Spotlight Hour, right? Immediately following, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Of all the ways that this could have possibly ended, this was the last thing I could have expected. And honestly, I wasn't sure if this is going to be my Joker moment. If there was a sign from above to just give up, it was this. But after all I had invested into this challenge, I knew I couldn't do that. I had become so obsessed with this challenge that I was literally seeing the crank timer in my dreams. So I pressed on, and I began to grind harder than I ever had to master this challenge. As I began my grind, I focused harder than ever on 2 things: optimizing the Easter egg even further, and solving the post-buoy step issue. These would not only help me get to the buoy step more consistently, but also help me complete it easier. And it all started with just writing stuff down. Up until now, I had mostly just been committing everything to memory, which didn't work very well, especially when trying to remember the code you told yourself 20 minutes ago. So I created a note on my phone to help remember the Nathan code, resonator variables, hard drive location, and the location that already had a node connected. This really helped speed things up, since I no longer had a need to backtrack or keep track of multiple codes at once. And additionally, I realized, why solve the equations when you can have a website solve them for you? By using Mr. Rufflewaffle's Terminus solver, I could spend more time playing and less time doing algebra in my head while playing, which definitely made my life easier. Next up was the basketball side Easter egg, which I had never been able to do before. This requires knocking off the basketball on the roof into the hoop to get a ton of points. And while this is usually difficult, the GS45s actually make it significantly easier. These points can even be doubled with the double points, and while it is rare to get this combo, it definitely feels good when it happens. Another small optimization I made was to utilize the Spore Island for extra parasites when traveling in a boat. Depending on where the island spawns in a given game, it might be useless, but I did have a few moments where the extra parasite was actually really helpful. So far, I mostly talked about the smaller optimizations to make things a little easier or gain a slight advantage. But over the next few days, I started to recognize some of my biggest strategical blunders, and it all starts with purple-eyed zombies. These guys spawn during certain events, like activating the amp units or charging the resonator, and their purple eyes helps distinguish them from round zombies. They're typically worth a small amount of points so that you can't just farm them and get a maxed out weapon on round 10, which makes them seem pretty worthless. But in Cranked, they still count towards fully resetting the timer, so killing them is often just better to do than killing round zombies for keeping the rounds low. But this wasn't so easy with the GS45s, since they typically group up with the round zombies. And even when I tried to avoid killing round zombies, there were usually a decent amount that slipped through the cracks. Which is why it's important to actually not use the GS45s. For the vast majority of this challenge so far, I hadn't really touched my lethal equipment, but the combat axe once again proved its worth here. By using the combat axe, I could pick off the purple-eyed zombies while mostly avoiding the round zombies. This didn't always go as planned, especially when the resonator made a zombie invincible mid-throw, but it was far better than just blasting away and hoping for the best. But aside from that, I began to realize that the purple-eyed zombies had one other important use. They can actually be used to charge your field upgrade. This is crucial for Temple Island specifically, since I would usually need to kill a round's worth of zombies in order to get my field upgrade back and leave. But this also created a new problem for me, since Deadwire would eventually kill my round zombies while I was trying to kill the purple-eyed zombies. And I thought, how could I fix this? For the entire time, I had been putting Deadwire on my box gun, since it would be more accurate than my GS45s, and it wouldn't be needed for the entire game. But that idea changed drastically thanks to one terrible zombie build. Since I first leveled up the Solog months ago, I equipped the Akimbo attachment, since it seemed really cool, but when I pulled it out of the box during my 41st attempt, I was barely even able to use them. I would switch my Solog build later on to avoid this happening again, but because of how terrible they were, I decided to switch them out for a Siren out of the box, and that was when I realized just how much better this was. By not having Deadwire, I could actually pick off the zombies without accidentally killing the whole horde. And since I was already putting Deadwire on my GS45s for the Nathan fight, why not just do it earlier? There was a singular instance where I missed the electrical boxes, which ultimately just ruined the rest of the game, but this was a major game changer for me, and it finally allowed me to maximize my points to their fullest potential. Classic Zombies fans hate this game's point system, and while I do generally agree that the point system in the older games was better, I don't loathe this point system as much as they do, and I think Cranked really makes it shine. In Cranked, you basically have a permanent double points applied to your kills, which is meant to help offset the added challenge of having a timer constantly yelling at you. The permanent double points had definitely been useful, but there were a lot of points left on the table because I was using the GS45s. it's near impossible to get a critical kill with them when they're pack-a-punched. So having a somewhat reliable gun that could help me get critical kills really helped me milk every zombie for as much as it was worth. But usually, this would come with a big downside, since you would have to buy ammo once you run out. But considering that I'm just going to replace it with the Beam Smasher, there's no need to upgrade it. And that keeps the ammo cost at a measly 250 points, which is the difference of getting 5 critical kills rather than regular kills. With this, I get to get more points at earlier rounds, which helped alleviate the fact that I would be on lower rounds when on the harder steps. And because I no longer had Deadwire, I could reliably farm purple zombies for my field upgrade without accidentally killing the whole horde, which once again helped keep me at a lower round. But as important as points are, they're only half of the economy in this game. Salvage is just as important, if not more important than points are in this game, and that was especially true for this challenge. As I mentioned earlier, I had learned that score streaks stop the timer, and I felt that this could be perfect for stalling out the bomb step dialogue, but through my testing, I realized that the Hellstorm probably wouldn't be enough, since not only would it be unreliable to stall and kill with, but I was only able to get it to last for around 18 seconds maximum. If I wanted to stall through that dialogue, it would probably take a better score streak that I could activate from the boat, which basically means that I need to somehow craft or get a chopper gunner. Getting that much salvage wasn't hard to achieve in the later rounds, but now that I was trying to keep the rounds as low as possible, I had to figure out how I could even get that much salvage. I tried the Crab Island Easter egg, but between the animations and the timer only lasting about as much as the Whack-A-Crab timer itself, there was no way that it was possible unless a zombie happened to pass by you while doing it, which never happened in my testing. So I started trying to save every bit of salvage that I could, which I had already partially done by not buying Deadwire twice. But on top of this, I stopped upgrading my GS45s entirely, since having them at Grey Rarity doesn't really make too much of a difference for the Nathan fight. But this alone wouldn't give me the salvage I needed, so I started to maximize my chances of getting salvage drops as much as I could. Since environmental and purple-eyed zombies usually don't drop salvage, I started using the basic XM4s and Jackal PDWs from the guards to kill them, since those don't have suppressors on them, and killed round zombies using my suppressed weapons, such as the GS45s and my weapon from the box. And on top of this, I started to really maximize what I could from the map's other sources of salvage. Underwater chests usually aren't too out of the way, and they can provide a bit of salvage or even things like ether wrenches or therium crystals, which help save on salvage and points. But most importantly, the map's dig spots are an incredible way to get lots of salvage. And while I was casually digging them up when I first started this challenge, I had practically memorized every spawn location by this point. I also started making the effort to open the tunnels earlier by not buying Quick Revive and Juggernog until later, since the earlier you open the tunnels, the sooner the dig spots will respawn. And while this technically did make the early game harder, I had finally gotten better at surviving even without my survival perks. Finally, after making it to the buoy step on my 40-second run, I decided to activate High Contrast mode. This setting makes characters easier for players to see who would normally struggle with that, but it's also just useful for making enemies more visible. And as much as I didn't want to turn it on for the sake of the viewing experience, I felt like it was just too useful not to use. But despite all of these improvements in my gameplay, strategies, and optimizations, there was one thing above all else that proved to be a serious issue: choking. Every time I got to the buoy step, I could feel that pressure mounting. It's really hard to explain just how stressful the buoy step is in Cranked without experiencing it yourself. But to give you an idea of what it's like, let's use a house of cards. Imagine you've just spent the past 2 hours trying to build a house of cards, and after a few tries, you finally managed to get somewhere. You spent the past 40 minutes carefully building it up, avoiding as many errors as possible, since one small mistake could make the whole thing come crumbling down. As you keep adding card after card, it becomes more and more nerve-wracking, and then you feel a breeze. Maybe it's just a light breeze from someone opening a door, maybe it's just the wind blowing, or maybe it's a fucking tornado. Whether it's getting soft-locked in the lockdown, having the game freak out because you finished the final hack as the timer expired, Gobblegums failing to work while on a boat, or the beam smashers spamming only the alt fire as you switch to it, I encountered a lot of bugs that could cause the whole thing to crumble in front of my very eyes. And sometimes, I just got unlucky. Like when I pulled 2 fucking maelstroms from the box in a row. In those tense moments, it's really easy to get fixated on something and forget about something else in the process. When you're putting those final cards on top of your house, maybe you forgot to text someone back or forgot that you left the sink on, and that sets up a chain of events which ends up ruining everything. Sometimes I'd be too focused on popping my power keg that I'd forget to kill the parasite before the final white flash. Or sometimes I'd be too fixated on hitting the free full power with 2 inaccurate pistols, when I probably could have just gotten to land in time. Ultimately, choking on this step was just far too common for me, and time was starting to run out. This LTM would only be around until Season 3 Reloaded, and it wasn't long before I'd be unable to finish this challenge. But as I kept grinding, theory crafting, and improving, I was finally about to have luck on my side for once. My 44th attempt started off with a pretty standard early game, but once I grabbed the resonator and headed to the islands, everything changed. I managed to get an Ethereum crystal from a chest on Castle Rock Island, which meant I now had a Pack-a-Punch KSV. While it's debatable whether this is a downgrade because of the increased cost to buy ammo, the fact that I get more ammo and have to use less ammo to kill things is just good. So I personally see it as an upgrade. And as I arrived at Crab Island, I was greeted by another chest with the blue ether tool in it, which gave me blue GS45s right off the bat. This gave me a massive advantage early, and I managed to carry that all the way to the node step. I focused on keeping my parasites alive as long as I could with efficient boat kills, and I managed to finish the node step by the end of round 11. To put that into perspective, that means I fully charged the resonator, crafted the beam smasher, got the hard drive, fought Nathan, did the shipwreck lockdown, and repaired both nodes in the span of 2 rounds. On round 13, I started the buoy step, and I lined myself up to instantly head right once I finished hacking. On my way to Temple Island, I even used the Spore Island to get an extra parasite. And from there, I was able to use my GS45s to quickly get my field upgrade and finish off the 2nd and 3rd hacks. I managed to kill a parasite just before the white flash and quickly headed towards the main island while using my field upgrade and power keg. I attempted to hit the free full power, but had no luck, and had to pop my chopper gunner as time started running out. I stalled as long as I could in the chopper gunner, but it was here where I realized a crucial flaw in my strategy. Zombies don't spawn outside of the lab during the bomb step. Not wanting to have the run end like this, I spammed the hell out of my timeout, and I somehow managed to pop it during the end of the chopper gunner, which I wasn't expecting to work at all. Also, Carver decided that now was the time to question Peck about getting his ass blown up back in Russia, while they're minutes away from the entire island being blown up. With how many bugs I've found throughout all of this, I could probably become Treyarch's #1 QA employee, if they didn't mostly get fired already. Anyways, after defusing all of Modi's bombs, it was once again time to do some high rounding, and for the most part, things were going pretty well. I got all my perks, started preparing Gobblegums for the boss fight, and it was doing well with mostly the Beam Smasher until the 30s, which is when I switched to mainly using the GS45s. camping isn't really possible in cranked high rounds, given the sheer amount of zombies that are on your ass at all times. But because of the permanent double points I mentioned earlier, you really can't run out of points while using the GS45s, so I can spam them as much as I want. I had managed to progress even higher than the last time I was high rounding, up until I made one stupid fucking mistake, man. On round 45, I ran out of GS45 ammo, so I ran to try and buy more while replating, but because of all the animations, I didn't get enough time to switch to my GS45s quick enough. But I knew I was still fine, so I went to pop my field upgrade, and I accidentally popped my mutant injection instead. And there was nothing I could do as I watched yet another run die. This was even more depressing than the last time, given it was entirely my own fault. I couldn't blame Treyarch or anyone else. It was just me making a really dumb mistake. And on top of that, I found out that my chopper gunner strategy wasn't going to cut it. If I wanted to actually get to the bomb step, I was going to have to get inside the lab somehow. And though I wasn't entirely sure, I had one final idea to try, but I just needed to pull it off. My 53rd attempt started with a few minor mistakes. I had to kill some zombies to escape the secret workshop, and I also killed a few zombies with the tentacle trap while retrieving the hard drive. But on the bright side, I finally got to use the basketball Easter egg with a double points, and it felt pretty damn good. But by round 12, I had made it to the buoy step, and with my new strategy, I just needed to finally execute. For the first time, I had finally made it to the biolab without needing timeout. I was a little confused by the random zombie on the stairs, but if I had to guess, I'd say it was probably spawned during the node step, since they don't despawn for some reason. But regardless, I had finally pulled this off, and it felt so satisfying to finally see the strategy pan out. And for the first time, I had to actually manage the crank timer during the bomb step. It wasn't too different apart from needing to kill in the smoke, but I did make a small error by using the GS45s while in the smoke, since that revealed me. It also helped that I got an extra smoke thanks to Vulturade during this step, so I didn't even need to tank through the last one. Once I finished defusing, I was able to kill a random zombie breaking out of a chamber, which saved me from using my field upgrade. And now it was once again time to high round. By round 18, I had all my perks, and I barely needed to use the GS45s until I got into the 40s. But on the other hand, I also barely got any mutant injection drops, which really hurt me in the long run. Once you get to round 45 or so, the game starts to get so hard that it could honestly be considered unplayable. There is a ton of zombies that are almost constantly sprinting at you, and unlike normal high rounds, you don't get that bit of reprieve in between rounds, and you don't have a field upgrade to bail you out. The only way to really play the game at all is with score streaks, and I made the dumb mistake of crafting chopper gunners to prepare for the boss fight. As I kept using my equipment and score streaks, my salvage started draining rapidly, and on round 50, I lost my dying wish and went down while trying to craft more equipment. I could barely do anything with the amount of zombies around me, but I somehow managed to make it back to the shipwreck to try and buy back my perks. But after running out of dying wishes, I I tried to buy my perks again and died without a self-revive, ending my run on round 51. I once again felt pretty disappointed, but I was able to reflect on those last few rounds and realize that I was just making the game harder for myself. Instead of trying to craft chopper gunners to save them for the boss fight, I knew I should just be focusing solely on mutant injections until right before the boss fight. And I knew I shouldn't even bother trying to kill stuff with the GS45s in those last few rounds when I can just use mutant injections. Sure, it's pretty lame, but given how unplayable these high rounds become, this was really the only option I had, especially given how little time left I had. I wasn't able to play on the following day, which left me with one final day to pull the boss fight off before the mode was gone. After all the effort I had put into this, I knew I had to give it my all, so I planned to play as much as I could throughout the day, and since I had 2 hours in the morning, I started an attempt, but it didn't last very long. And because of that, I decided to run it back one more time. Attempt number 56 started off with a green AK-74 from the box, and while I wasn't a major fan of the gun, I was more than happy to just see something that wasn't a shotgun or sniper for once. While in the biolab, I squeezed every bit of value I could from the environmental spawns, and after calibrating the resonator, I nearly got trapped inside the secret workshop. But I was saved by reactive armor, and headed to the islands while forgetting entirely about the basketball Easter egg. Things didn't start off well on Castle Rock Island, since I killed multiple round zombies using the combat axe, but everything changed the moment I opened this chest. I got both a raw Ethereum crystal and blue ether tool from this chest, which is probably the best high roll I could ask for. And on Temple Island, I followed this up with a cryo freeze drop, which I put on my AK-74 for the time being. It didn't do much, but it does give a bit of extra points, so if I'm getting it for free, I'm not gonna complain. I crafted the Beam Smasher on round 10, and nearly went down in the process. But unlike the earlier attempts, I knew to stay cool and just use the alt fire. I had a clean hard drive retrieval with no zombies killed by the trap, and took down Nathan on round 11 after farming for my field upgrade. After completing the lockdown, I repaired the first node and played it risky when grabbing the second. While I did just barely make it, these moments would have made me panic back when I first started, whereas now I was confident in what I was doing. However, that confidence wavered a bit as I went through the buoy step. I managed to hack the final buoy with just 2 seconds remaining, but immediately following that, I forgot to kill the parasite before the white flash, and on top of that, I messed up the power keg and threw a smoke on accident. Since I had made it this far, and today was the final day, I knew that I needed to take every chance I could get, and so, I popped a timeout. Despite the lack of smokes, I was still able to finish the bomb step by just tanking hits, and the door to Patient 13 was once again open. I bought tier 3 armor early to avoid needing to come back here later, and instantly started prepping my gobblegums. I initially was thinking a raindrops might be good, but I ended up popping it to replace it with a power keg, since raindrops requires more space and could cost me in a crucial moment. Once I had enough salvage, I crafted a Casimir to get drops thanks to Vulturade, and by round 22, I bought all of my perks. Once I was pretty much set on points, I solely focused on using my GS45s, since the suppressors could help me with salvage issues later on, and thanks to a few mutant injection drops, the later rounds were a lot less brutal. On round 44, I started spamming mutant injections, and once I hit round 51, I used a final mutant injection to get back to the biolab. There, I used a Casimir to buy me some time and crafted a chopper gunner and another Casimir. and I was officially prepared for the boss fight. However, because of the sheer amount of zombies, my armor took a severe beating before going into the fight, and I didn't really have time to go back and craft more, so I was just going to have to live with it. Finally, before entering the door, I popped a timeout, since I was making damn sure that I got in that boss fight, especially after my experience during Cowabunga Cranked. It may have made for a funny screenshot, but it also tilted the hell out of me, and I was not planning to fuck around and find out again. But at long last, it was finally time to fight Patient 13 in the most intense boss battle of my zombies career. I started off by wasting a bit of time on my timeout because I wasn't shooting him initially, which I didn't realize I was supposed to do. I immediately noticed that the zombies appeared to be a lot less aggressive, but that didn't stop them from destroying what was left of my armor. As soon as phase 1 was over, the zombies started super sprinting, which I was not ready for. I decided to use one of my Casimirs just to give myself a bit of breathing room while trying to train around the arena and get some armor back. Right as phase 2 began, I popped my shields up to deal with the armor issue, but my timeout had run out as well, meaning that I now had to deal with the crank timer during the fight. This is where the fight really began to devolve and basically turned into a fucked up game of Where's Waldo, only with parasites and vermin instead of Waldo. And also, you only have 10 seconds. Parasites and vermin are the only feasible things to kill, given that zombies take several seconds to kill, and can sometimes screw you over by turning into crawlers. And on top of all of that, you have to fight to get your kills before Patient 13 slams and kills them all himself. This is where Deadwire comes in really handy, despite the fact that Napalm Burst would help a lot with boss damage. As the second phase raged on, I started to find my groove as I juggled killing Patient 13 with killing zombies and also keeping my ammo full by doing a sort of figure eight around the arena while buying ammo in the middle. I eventually had no choice but to pop my field upgrade when I couldn't find any zombies, but I had actually missed the zombies to my right because I turned to my left instead. I think this moment really encapsulates just how difficult this fight is, given everything is a split-second decision, and one wrong choice can kill you on the spot. While the field upgrade was active, I popped my full power just in case, and that was a good decision since I ended up needing it soon after while reloading. But right as all of this was happening, I got hit with a massive slam from Patient 13, bringing me down to 8 HP. I tried my best to run towards the back of the arena, but I was swiped by a zombie that instantly spawned to my left, and the zombie in front of me sprinted straight at me and took my dying wish. This made the fight significantly more difficult, and I knew above all else, it was important to finish this phase ASAP. Once I was back in the main part of the arena, I threw a Casimir and unloaded every bullet I had onto Patient 13, but even that wasn't enough. Fortunately, it didn't take much more to end phase 2, but things were definitely not looking good. I tried to focus on gaining armor in between phases, but with how many zombies were just sprinting at me, I couldn't really manage to do that. An amalgam eventually spawned, and I ended up getting trapped in a corner with it and a ton of zombies. I tried to run towards the back of the arena, but that was the moment Patient 13 decided to pop back up. And I remembered from when I first completed Terminal that he knocks you into the water if you're not at the front of the arena, which would be a death sentence in Cranked. I knew I couldn't go that way, so my only choice was to double back and hope for the best, and the amalgam grabbed me. I thought it might be over, but for some reason, I only lost half of my HP. I don't know if this is just how they work in the fight in general, or maybe if this is a Crank-specific thing to make the fight a bit less brutal. But regardless, I was really thankful for it. After getting grabbed, I quickly popped my chopper gunner at just 20 HP, and I managed to get a decent amount of damage done, but got kicked out 2/3 of the way through. Now, I had no get out of jail free cards left, but I still had to give it my best shot. I kept blasting away until I had to field upgrade, since all that was left was an amalgam. And at the same time, I had to prepare for Patient 13's wipe attack. I hid behind cover, but got trapped between the amalgam and some zombies as I ran out of GS45 ammo. I managed to somehow kill the zombies with the beam smasher, but still got grabbed, and I really thought I was going to go down, but ended up with 37 HP after the amalgam dropped me. I don't know why this grab took significantly less time than usual, and my best guess is that either the other amalgam spawned and stopped it, or I might have just been really close to it. But regardless, I survived another amalgam grab. I avoided the amalgam and ran through the zombies before the wipe attack, but this ultimately left me with no zombies again. I had to make a split-second decision on what to do here. There were a few zombies that spawned in, but all I saw during my brief glance was the amalgam, which I definitely wasn't killing. I looked at his health bar and realized that his health was pretty low, and so I knew I just had to go for it. And that's how I completed Terminal in the worst way possible. It was a long, difficult journey, but it felt incredible to finally complete the challenge, given I literally jumped out of my chair the moment I saw his health bar disappear with 1.8 seconds left on the timer. And since I completed it so early, I still had time to get to round 50 on Liberty Falls and the Tomb before Team Cranked was gone. But in the following days and weeks since beating Patient 13, I look back on it and still can't believe I did that, which solidifies it as one of those memorable moments. This was truly a moment where I did something I didn't even know was possible, something that made me a better player, and something that will still invoke that satisfying feeling for years to come. In the year or so since I've truly immersed myself in Call of Duty Zombies, this is by far my greatest achievement, especially because, at least to my knowledge, I am the sole person to have done this. I tried looking for anything related to cranked boss fights at higher rounds, and I could barely even find that many cranked fights, let alone ones at round 50 or higher. Moments like these are why I love playing zombies, and why I'll continue to play it. It's about overcoming difficult obstacles, making use of the tools you're given, and achieving something that feels satisfying in a way no other game can really do. And while I would have liked to do it without using timeouts, Team Cranked wasn't really around for long enough for me to do that. Regardless of whether timeout diminishes things or not, I'm still really happy with how it all panned out. But above all else, the thing I actually really liked about this challenge was that I finally got to understand Terminus. It wasn't my least favorite map in the game, but I always struggled to enjoy it as much as maps like Citadel and Shattered Vale. Before this challenge, I think my Black Ops 6 map tier list would have looked something like this. But after finishing this challenge, things have changed a bit, and I'd say it looks a little more something like this. I never really got to appreciate all the cool little things about this map until now, and there were a lot of things that I always found tedious or annoying. I used to really hate the amp units, just like how I hate generators, but I've come to realize just how well they're designed. They give you an extra gun off the bat that's weak, but more than enough to fend off those worthless zombies. At first, I hated having to do the resonator code, but now that I've learned a lot more about it, I don't really mind it much anymore. And while I used to find the dig spots and chests a bit tedious, I've come to realize that they're really not as out of the way as I once believed. And now that I don't have a timer constantly counting down, I've been able to really appreciate the boats and traveling to the surrounding islands, as well as the art of driving them well. I've also been able to familiarize myself with each area of the map and really understand how the map and Easter egg flow. and it's something that's worth appreciating. There's also a ton of little details about the map that I never really bothered to notice, and getting to see those made the repetitive early games just a bit more worth it. I also think it was nice to go back in the story and take in a lot of the dialogue, given that now things have taken a turn. I forgot to add this in initially, but I also really wanted to mention the Beam Smasher and how cool of a wonder weapon it is. I got to use it pretty extensively throughout this challenge, and it strikes a great balance between being unique and being strong while not being so strong that it's just boring. But back to Terminus, is it my favorite map? No, but I've grown to really like it, and the next time I play it, it won't just be because I want to play Black Ops 6, but because I want to play Terminus. And that's what I think was missing when I played this map before. To end this off, there's 3 main things I want to say. First off, Treyarch, please do not bring back Cranked again. Once was fine, and twice was a little unnecessary, but I am absolutely done with Cranked now. I don't care if the timer looks like a pizza, weed, or a regular-ass timer. I don't want to see it again until maybe Black Ops 7. But secondly, I wanted to once again thank you all for the support on the Black Ops 6 videos. I'm not going to be solely focused on zombies videos, but I do still have some ideas in the pipeline. This video took a little longer to make than I wanted to, given I was sick for a while and had a lot of other things going on, and then Monster Train 2 came out, but I hope the wait was worth it. And finally, I wanted to bring things back to Terminal. I completed this challenge a long while ago, but now that I've completed it like this, I wanted to give a bit of encouragement to those who might be struggling on it. It is definitely one of Black Ops 6's harder Dark Ops challenges, but it is still doable. Maybe it will take a few tries, but I think you can do it. And unlike this video, you won't need to optimize everything to perfection or solve difficult problems, because you can just play the Easter egg at your own pace. Don't give up, and eventually you'll be able to do it. And just be thankful that you don't have a timer yelling at you. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.